it shouldn't vary too much from 33, right?
You gotta follow
Your
in November,
statistical
which is
norm.
100.
Yeah, 100.
Deb, we'll take questions.
Well, I just wanted to know, because you
Well,
are
hold on.
taking questions, but then we're not stating our name and our address, and we're just speaking out loud, and then another person had a question before people started speaking, so I just wanted to know what the rules are, if we're changing them. I haven't been in a while, so are we doing this differently now? or-
I'll take that's all right, Marie, that's all right. I am going to prioritize questions from the council because I also have to keep them informed. I won't answer I will give everybody a chance to ask questions.
Okay, because
If you
when
have a
he said
specific
that there was a
question.
question, Daryl had his hand up for about 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden these questions started going,
Yep,
so I was just
okay,
trying to figure out what's going on.
I recognize that, thank
Yeah.
you.
I'll check that out and see what happens here.
So,
That's why I'd like to.
Well, I noticed you didn't sign in either one of you, so I mean, if you're talking about the rules, let's play all by the same rules.
Okay. Right.
we're not talking about rules, we're in the
Well, I
middle of a
understand, I'm just
discussion.
saying, you know, it's not, first of all, it's not a council meeting, it's a water committee meeting.
It should be more like 50%. Yeah, I'll look into that in more detail. Yeah, so, okay.
Well,
I didn't know you had to
but
sign
let's
in
go
to
back
ask a
to.
question.
But I mean, that procedure would be
What does it
correct.
say to
And
ask
so
a
maybe
question?
the numbers just, somehow they got crossed over.
Supposed to sign in for here, so you're on
Brandon,
public
you
record
understand
being
though
here.
what I was saying?
That's why you state your name and
I
address
could see
on
if they're
record.
varying, there's some statistical average away from the average,
To do that.
but when it's, whether that's.
So I noticed your phone number, your address aren't in here, so,
So,
Could they have it in City Hall?
well,
Would you like to take this conversation outside?
I'm just trying to figure
Well,
out,
let's
you
go
know,
take it outside so we don't
Water
disrupt
come
these
out.
people.
You're
who are
right,
trying to
'cause
control the meeting.
I had a question. Council got to talk, and I did.
So between, we're measuring distribution and consumption, there's no buffer, there's no.
There isn't a significant amount, let's put it that way.
there is storage, you know, I wonder how that would.
Well, the thing is that the storage, just like being the 20th of the month versus the calendar month, hopefully over time would equalize out. And
Well,
so,
if you're metered in and you're metered out, no matter how much storage is there, you're still metered in, metered out, that storage would actually mean nothing.
On average.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
If
but I
you-
mean,
if
it
you were
might
reading
make
what
a
was coming out,
difference.
what,
it can make a difference like a single month,
But again,
but
statistically.
she should average it out.
Right.
Okay, all right, so you guys are gonna try to figure this
Yeah,
out.
I'll work on that.
The one thing, if you know, in 2007, Bluebird produced 32 million. In 2008, it produced 29 million. In 2009, it produced 27, and all of a sudden, in 2010, it produced
Mhm.
43.
Yep.
So your graphs barely show that. I mean,
Well, it shows that
Not-
area underneath that curve.
yeah, right, the area under the curve. I mean, but it doesn't stand out. But here, it definitely does.
Yeah.
And so one thing I would ask is there a way to make an average for the graph and then the point for that month where it is off of the average? Because then it would pop out, right?
Well, yeah, you could do that, but then you just have one more line to kind
Well,
of confuse the
right,
issue.
instead of, I mean, if you're trying to simplify this,
Uh-huh.
because what we're really wanting to do in this case is to see how it's tracking with the average.
Okay.
Isn't that what you did there?
What?
You plotted all these and you're showing that on average, everything kind of tracks with itself.
Right, yeah, there is no average to show, but you mean just have an average and then just show the current month, current year?
Do some sort of statistical average and not show the year, but show, I mean, if we're watching for problem areas, right? If you're showing the statistical average and you're showing the difference from that statistical average, then you're gonna say that's an outlier, there's something wrong
Okay,
with the
so what you're
data.
saying is do a statistical average and then plot just the current information
Yeah,
against
right, yeah.
against that average.
Yeah, and if it's, and then determine, I don't know, you could do standard deviation, but I mean,
Yeah.
what the idea is that just an outlier, or is there a problem with the reading, or is there something wrong with our equipment?
Yeah.
Right, and that's really kind of what that's trying to do.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's a suggestion. The other thing is, I mean, obviously, something happened at Bluebird, I would like to say it's an act of God and we're getting 25% more, give him the credit. But before I assume that, can we, I think that's where you need to kind of focus your attention on. And Preston and Doug, the other thing I would ask is, there are 2 points where we overflow on Bluebird Spring.
Right.
At the spring box
Uh-huh.
and then bypassing the reservoir.
Right,
There's water that can't even get into the pipe,
that's true.
right? And so you have a bypass. Is that somehow,
I think that's metered from what I've heard.
and maybe suddenly we're including that bypass. There's 2 bypasses. You need to ask
Yeah,
Jim.
I'll get more information, Jim, on it.
Because that would make sense. We're trying to capture about 10 million. If we, the discussion that we've had earlier with the city engineer is that we can collect about 10 million gallons of runoff, of water that bypasses the reservoir when we put ASR in. However, if we increase the size of that line through the vineyard, we should be able to double it to almost 20 million gallons. So if you look at the difference, we're talking about in the area of 10 to 12 million gallons.
Yeah.
So it's possible that somehow we started including in our bypass, or including that in our readings.
Well, see, the bypass has been running about 15, 16 million ever since they were monitoring it. 16.
On one end.
Oh, there's 20.
But there's another bypass at the bottom end.
Well, there's one bypass. That's the same bypass. This, right? This bypass is that bypass.
Yeah, they're the same.
So, okay, anyway, those are points to look at,
Okay.
and obviously,
Okay, good.
we need to know if it's really that high percentage, but Brent and I would agree with you, it shouldn't vary so much if it was a water loss.
Mm-hmm.
So
There should be
I would
it
look
should
at-
oscillate in a reasonable manner.
Right.
And it does seem to oscillate around the same number of 30 something year after year, so it just the extremes didn't seem to be accounted for.
Right. Good. I'll rework that.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
just think that percentage loss,
it. Yeah, somehow,
formula's not quite right.
yeah, it's not working right. Okay, good.
Like for the year of 2010, that should be closer to 25%.
Okay.
Oh, just taking a look at the 1 month.
No, that's looking at the whole year average at the bottom.
Yeah, just take, do
Oh,
the math of the average at the bottom.
Yeah, so look at some where everything's at. Okay, but I mean, it's great, the information there
We're
is
getting there.
what we're working on, and we can correct that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
I think the
what,
graphs are really nice. It shows you the history and a snapshot of it. Chris's suggestion of an average could provide the baseline for each, incoming
Yeah.
year. A little easier to see, maybe.
right, yeah, you always
Black line for
simplify,
average or something.
you always simplify a graph with as little data as you can,
Yeah.
otherwise,
Mhm.
it just becomes overwhelming. Okay, so,
We do that.
let's, Doug, then the other thing is, you're thinking about a way to measure and record recharge volumes when we get ASR in line, bypass volumes. And I wouldn't mind looking at graphs of bypass by month or something as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, I had that, but it somehow just didn't work
Okay,
out.
that's fine.
But yeah,
Um,
you want bypass too?
And right now, what we're doing is, city gets these numbers, they get them to you, and then you update all this and get it back to them, right?
Mhm.
We ought to look at how we can make that automatic, so.
Well, yeah. I think once we
The
get
numbers they get, they put in. and-
stabilized
right.
then.
Once we determine the graphs, everything that we want as a final report, then we'll figure out how to get that in.
Right.
Okay, good.
Question for you, Doug, on this, the Lafayette Dayton production side of the numbers there.
Uh-huh.
So there'd be no loss basically in that system, right? Not
Okay.
part of it, or How
Okay.
are we figuring loss in that system?
I would say that there's no loss that we know of, that hasn't been taken into account. Yeah, which is correct. Now, whether there is or not, I don't know.
You're not listening. No.
Okay, so we have, because these wells, that's our contribution
Right.
to that system.
Right.
And then the metered amount going out, you know, so the only place there would really be a loss would be between, you know, the reservoir or something like that.
Yeah, so really the loss we're talking about is within from the watershed to our
Right.
distribution system.
Well, or within the distribution system itself.
So, right.
Well, why wouldn't it include the water that's coming from Dayton?
Well, but you're going basically from the, well, I suppose you could lose some, coming from the wells over to the reservoir.
It could be coming from either source, right? Because you're the
Yeah.
summing up the total production, which is both the sources,
Yeah, oh yeah.
and the total use. So it could be, we could be losing it either place,
Well, yeah,
if
yeah.
we're actually losing
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, it could, the inefficiency, the inaccuracy in the numbers could be in either
It
place.
just seems like there's so much shorter lines over on the Dayton side.
It's
Do
probably
they have
negligible.
a meter on the well itself and at the reservoir, so if the well is putting out 100 gallons, they'll see it coming in?
Well,
I
you
don't
know,
know.
You
it's
know
a
what I'm
good
saying?
point,
If it's
because
only metered at one end, then you wouldn't know if you had lost.
when we used to, do we still get Dayton information?
Well,
Dayton, because if you look at the water
Yeah,
going
see,
into
that's-
the reservoir,
see, that was what was in, the trouble is, this has been extracted. We aren't really getting we used to get the actual report from Dayton.
Yeah.
Now they're just kind of plugging
do
it into.
you have a copy of one you can give to Preston?
Yeah.
Okay, can you give that to Preston? Preston, can you ask if we can get that again? When we used to do the analysis over there were always inaccuracies in how much water went in and how much went out. So a lot of our losses could be right there. Well, those measurements in the reservoir, so I would think it's after, I would think our meters are at the pumps that bring water to us.
Yeah. See, I think that's.
Probably at each well and then at the pumps, that's what happens. But I'll have to check it.
The one thing I've often thought about, since our system is a higher pressure than Dayton's, if our check valves are leaking at our pumps, and we're always 20 pounds higher, we're always trying to force water into the reservoir from Lafayette. If our check valves are leaking, we're pouring water in there all the time. But you would see that if we looked at their numbers, that they always had surplus of water rather than
Yeah,
negatives. And I think they would have negatives too.
so we got to take a look. This happens to be one of the reports that was, I don't know where that comes from. I just, it's just passed on.
Well, this is part of what they send over
I think
with
that-
the bill.
I think that comes from Dayton.
Yeah, it is. But it doesn't show the total amount of, there used to be something that we got, you can see this, Preston, but we used to get something that would show, all the water that went into that reservoir. So it was all of their wells plus their springs.
This is what we were getting from Dayton, this report here.
We used to get that, but there was something more.
Okay, here's another one.
I'll have to look at my data. Let's move on for now, but I
Yeah.
mean, that's something,
Is this the one
if
you're
you can
talking
take that as,
Is that the one you're talking about?
well, I've not seen this format. but-
Yeah, that's what they're for.
So Doug, did you build this spreadsheet?
No,
or is
no, that just
that's
came,
what
that
came
just
from
comes to me.
Dayton? Okay.
And that's another one that I've received
1,
one
2,
time.
3, 4, 5,
I mean, it's a whole bunch
Flower
of stuff.
Lane, well, Lone Street.
So that's all
Yeah.
of Dayton's, everything.
This is a different format from what I'm used to seeing, but if you see that one, it shows everything that's produced in,
Anyway, yeah.
that goes into the reservoir. And we ought to know that, because everything that goes into that reservoir, we're paying half on, or a percentage of all the maintenance, all of the operational cost, the employees' salaries. And so we ought to have a better view of the total of all the water that is being processed through that system. And I know we get it we get a breakdown, now I don't think it's monthly, I think it's total when we get our bills. Because, right, we get billed twice a year from Dayton for our share of the operational cost. And so we ought to know what that is. And then we can do that, and it'll help us in our analysis too. Anyway, okay, good.
And if anybody can think of some, magic, one single graph that would kind of, everything would jump out at us, that'd be great. I haven't come up
Well,
with that.
I mean, this is the way, you start with this and you start
Yeah.
narrowing it down to something that's useful. And then you give it to somebody and they go, I don't know what that means, and you start over again.
Yeah, I can read
One
that.
of these two. Okay. Dayton Wellfield Management Support to include well testing plan, development of procedures for operation and maintenance. Dayton Prairie Groundwater Association developed plan to improve fire flow capabilities. Todd, I know you were not here at the last meeting, but we talked and you were okay with taking these on. I don't know if you're ready to discuss anything, but except for maybe a overall agenda of how we want to attack this.
At the present time, I did meet with Preston a week ago, and we talked about him having a meeting with the city of Dayton's city administrator to begin the process of looking at whose needs, what's, why's, their operating procedures, the financial side of it. Also, I'm encouraged that Mayor and you guys offered for me to go onto the farmer's market over there, basically, for less than a better term, on their water system over there, or their water rights board. And with formerly owning property over there, I do have some idea of what they're doing and what our needs are. Preston and I talked about the studies that were done on the water level, water table. We know that the sky hasn't fallen. We know we got plenty of water over there. It may not be the ideal Bluebird Springs, but it's still sufficient. And also looking forward to the fire system in advance. So I think it's going to be a process between two cities, and I will protect our rights as our city. I believe that there's been, going back from our system to their system, they've both been poorly managed. And I think until we're finally getting our ducks in order, and I said this many meetings back, once we get to that position and we come with solid facts and say, folks, it's come to a time that we need to sit down and talk about this and share some of our problems and our wealth. So that's where I'm at with that. More to come. I think it'll be a slow process, because I think the water rights boys, the farmers meet like 4 times a year or something like that.
Yeah, I think just twice a year.
Twice a year, so there's going to be some lag in that, and but we're going to do it.
Preston, can you thanks Todd, and can you update us on? Did you have a chance to meet with Christie, I guess, city manager for Dayton, and was there a discussion? I think if you look at this month, well, there's a couple of things, but let me first just get your feedback on that, relevant to water issues. Anything you'd like to discuss here?
Well, I did meet with Christie, but we didn't get into the IGA very much at all. It was more overview of the system, how it's built, some of the other regional issues coming at us. But we're going to focus on the IGA on Thursday. This Thursday.
This Thursday? Okay. Do you have, like, a couple things of concern to me. One is, if you look at January's numbers, again, our wells produced 5 or 6 million gallons. We didn't take any of it, which means we're basically using our assets. And just to make it clear to everyone, it's like buying a new car and you let your neighbor drive it all the time. It's eventually going to have to be replaced and repaired, and we're responsible for 100% of the repair, and we're responsible for 100% of the replacement.
Well, and also at this point, well, 3's still down, and
You know, that's why I
Well,
said
one,
before,
They're
that
well ones
we
there.
should figure out a way to shut our wells off. When that signal on the hill says, we don't need the water.
Yeah,
And then they can pump that reservoir full with their wells
But-
instead of
but see,
ours,
that-
because as
that-
long as
that-
our horse is up and running, they don't care if there's a missing a leg. And that's how, and that's basically what's going on right now.
That's why we've got to really evaluate the
And
IGA.
if we're paying the freight on it, it's not making any sense.
You see, right
I
now,
mean, it's cruel to go and shut that, to
right
shut
now, we
those
don't,
wells
right
off.
now, we don't have that option.
No, but I'm saying that needs
Yeah.
to be somehow put in, and that needs to be conveyed to West Tech or whoever the engineers are. Why did you design that system that we paid for half of
Well, it's,
for them?
it's not, it's.
Well, you
more
got
than
a
design.
combination of a system that's designed to produce water, and
Exactly.
then you've got
But you've
a
got
policy
two
of
separate
like,
entities though.
that, you know, two city councils and maybe other guy
Yeah.
came up with, well, there's a real disconnect.
Yeah.
And, you know, we hope to fix that.
Right. What I'm saying is that if we, I'm not saying shut them off and let them go dry. I'm talking get a system on our wells over there to when that thing shuts it down, we're good to go. If they have some failing wells, they need some water, then we can override that and give them water and track it. Right now, we can't track it. It's just running. I mean, we're tracking it, but we're not getting paid for it.
well, the point that I've made
That's
many
another-
times is that we are wholly deficient in being able to manage our resources and ensure that our equipment is taken care of. We have rights which the IGA give us, which we've never used. We've never reviewed their procedures. They probably don't have any. They gave us one, and they said that was it, and all it was the precedent of which wells turned on at low pressure levels, and which ones turn on first and second. And if you look at them, the first one turn on is one of ours, because theirs is, their equivalent that would turn on is down because it's broken. And then the next two that went turned on, it's another one of ours and one of theirs. And so in the first three wells, two of them are ours that come on. And they need water far more than we do. They use 60-70% of all the water over there. And we're producing 2/3 of the water that goes into that system. So it's backwards. That's an easy thing. The IGA gives us the ability to oversee and approve their operating procedures, and if that's the only one we have to approve, we should change the precedent, the sequence of which wells turn on. But Preston, you've heard it from us. The real point, and the council's asked you to go forward, but the real point is we have Lafayette assets that are being operated by our partner, but we are not overseeing it to make sure that our assets are being properly used, that we're being treated as an equal partner, and that we aren't unduly using our equipment at our expense. And those are all the things that are happening based on the results of the information that we've been collecting on production and what comes over here. So we haven't had since this information's been available, we haven't had a city administrator that really had the backing and the full-time responsibility to take care of this. We don't expect you to do it overnight, but I mean, it is something that we have to come to terms with and do our due diligence and protect our assets, which our citizens have paid for, not Dayton. And so they are a partner, but we need to be treated as an equal partner and treated fairly. And most people, certainly everybody on this council that's talked about it, feel that we've been taken advantage of. And so you have a big step to take. Whether we change the IGA, right now the IGA gives us rights that we don't even use, so I don't know, we know that it's not necessarily adequate, but we should at least,
Needs to be reviewed.
we need to invoke our responsibilities that are given to us by the IGA. Development of procedures for operation and maintenance, obviously that's part of it, and that's part of what Preston will get into eventually with the city administrator in Dayton. And that's my suggestion, was that we bring in an outside source like GSI that can provide us some decent procedures, operating procedures and maintenance procedures for the wells, test procedures, so that we can go out and actually get maximize our efficiencies on that equipment. Dayton Prairie Groundwater Association membership.